All right, guys, we're here. We are here. We are here, and we're starting off. We are starting off with some Bordeaux. Medoc Bordeaux. I didn't get too specific here. Obviously, there's a couple of very specific appellations here. Pomerol. Remember, we talked about we had a Pomerol the other day, and that is real green. That's Pomerol. So this is the right bank. This is the left bank. All right, so let's go into this. I lost my porch. Weather's too nice. Got to share it with the rest of the family. How are you guys doing? This is good. This one. I'll show you the wine again, guys. It's only like $25. Nothing too crazy. Honestly, it's a little tight. Those who know that you shouldn't really be opening up anything besides for the most basic kind of Bordeaux. You shouldn't be opening it up this early. This wine is probably going to be better in 2-3 years. The really high tier ones, of course, can be much better over decades. But I think this one is really supposed to be open like 2022. And the thing about Bordeaux, I gotta tell you, I like Burgundy because not only do I prefer Burgundy, just flavor profile wise, but Burgundy, you can age it for 20, 30 years, 40 years even in some cases, and it can be phenomenal, like absolutely phenomenal. But you can also drink it in like 2, and it can still be wonderful experience. Whereas Bordeaux, really good Bordeaux, you age it 20, 30 years, it's incredible. But if you open that same bottle of Bordeaux in less than 10 years, even less than 15, it is really difficult to drink. You have to be very patient with high quality Bordeaux. Because guys, the thing is, this is Cabernet and Merlot. Merlot's a little softer, but Cabernet, I mean, this family of grapes has really big tannins, and that combined with the amount of oak that they use, I mean, this wine is really what's tannic. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say. What I mean by that is it coats your mouth. It's kind of like chewing on a green stem, right? That same sort of texture and sensation you have and flavor. I did a vertical when I was in wine school of a Bordeaux. I tasted it 5 years old, 10 years old, and 15 years old. 5 years old was terrible. 10 years old was more or less the same. It was a little bit different. It's actually starting to get good, and you can only imagine how much better it would have gotten over time. So anyway, some little wine tips as usual. I do not know this producer, but seems to do a decent job. All right, we got some interesting stuff here. I'm going to try to. I feel like I'm going to jump around a bit today. So, but the one thing I wanted to share with you that I learned that really, the kind of thing that blew my mind this week. Or wait a minute, should I save that for later? Let's just do some basic recaps first. We'll save the big stuff for later on. Basic recaps. So, thought it was pretty interesting about Joe Scarborough. The former congressman from Florida, who now married to Mika Brzezinski. Brzezinski maybe is how she's Americanized her Polish name. And very interesting little dynamics there. Now, Morning Joe or Morning Joe and Mika, I don't know, they had to maybe PC it a bit. And the sun is in my eyes. Anyway, it's a shitty show, but I know that I have to admit that there was a time I watched it a little bit. But I know that Trump and them have a lot of issues. Early on, Trump was there, and they liked Trump, and Trump liked them, blah blah blah. But it's since gotten pretty nasty. It's since gotten pretty caustic, and now Trump is basically calling to ask a very good question if you ask me, which is what happened to the dead intern in Joe Scarborough's office? What happened to that dead intern? Why was there a dead intern in Joe Scarborough's office? Very strange, very interesting question. And the whole story around that is very sketchy. Okay, there's a lot of sketchy stuff. So this is some of the stuff that I've heard about it. Joe Scarborough's intern, or aide, I guess aide is probably the right way to put it, because it wasn't like a college intern. She was like a formal aide. She was found dead in his office underneath his desk. He resigned from Congress, but not directly after that. That came later. I'm going to try to get this right. From what it seems like is that she had some sort of, like, Joe was involved in the 9/11 attacks, or he was involved. He had awareness of it. He had knowledge of it. And the suspicion is that she may have, well, I'll just tell you real quick. I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I was only going to do these through Easter, and now we're doing them once a week, and it's fun. It's fun. So, once the stuff gets put out in the open, I guess you won't need me. So maybe we'll stop, do something else. But there's always fun things to talk about. There's always new stuff going on. But so anyway, thanks, man. I look forward to him too. It's nice. I like the once a week format too. So what it seems like is that he had awareness. This is of what was going on with 9/11, and he was involved with it. I'm not going to say that he was like an orchestrator or anything, but he was connected to that. And this sort of evidence suggests that this intern or this aide, had knowledge of Joe's connection to what was going to happen on 9/11. And remember, guys, 9/11, we're at the point now where if you believe that at least the story that we were told about 9/11 is completely accurate, that the reason the buildings fell, I'm not going to talk about whether or not, I'm not talking about whether the planes flew into the building and had passengers. I mean, you can get into nitty gritty and debate details about the conspiracy, but just speaking broad strokes here, if you believe that 9/11 was completely legit, completely what we've been told about it, then you are on the wrong periscope. It's very, very difficult for me to understand at this point how people can't see it. I mean, Building 7 alone tips you off to it. Then you have all the creepy stuff with Bush, who behaving very much as somebody who knew about the attacks and was having the kids recite satanic, like a ritual. It was basically a ritual. It was, well, what was it? It was like basically talking about like plain steel melt, plain steel hit melt, plain steel hit melt. Like it was a really, really weird set of words that he was having these preschoolers or first graders or whatever recite over and over again. The look on his face is like creepy, and kite hit steel, kite, yeah, exactly. And he's like getting like really excited. Which, by the way, a little aside on the Bush family, they're Nazis. Some of their names were changed. The Prescott side of the Bush family was very heavily involved in eugenics programs. So they literally are Nazis. They literally are Nazis. They were some of the people who were brought over in paperclip. So, but yeah. Anyway, this stuff with Joe Scarborough, I'm going to get too much. I don't want to get too much in the details here because I'm obviously, from how I'm having a hard time putting it together, I'm forgetting a couple of little details. But the point here is that the aide was killed as a result of the connection with Scarborough to 9/11. And there's some interesting things with the dates around this and how this occurred. And remember, Mika Brzezinski's family is very, very cabal oriented. I mean, Zbigniew Brzezinski, not like her brothers also have their own roles, and I really recommend. I read a thread about this, and I think I'll post it after this Periscope to give you guys like a really, I think maybe it was Drew Tang, who does amazing research. It's a great account. I think that he maybe put this together. I can't recall, but basically, her family, her father, they're all cabal oriented. They've been involved with this for a very long time, and so it's almost kind of like there's this handler situation going on with her and Joe. And so I'm really interested in the fact that Trump keeps talking about this, because it seems to me if he's bringing all this attention to it and wants people to investigate. Yeah, thank you. That's right. They were involved with advanced weapons guidance systems in the Air Force. If it seems to me that there is something that Joe, that's connected to the murder of that aide, that links back to 9/11, and that's why Trump is bringing so much attention to it. Because if we get to the bottom of what happened to that aide and why she was killed, what did she know, then we can start to go and unravel these different pieces involved in that conspiracy. Because, guys, remember, it's like JFK, 9/11, Epstein, right? These are the three big ones. We got to get them unsealed. If you guys didn't call the White House today, go call the White House. Call the White House tomorrow if you haven't called them today. It really, I honestly thought I'd be on there for a couple of minutes. It took like less than 10 seconds to call. And they said, it was like immediate pickup. Hello, this is the White House. And just said, I would like to request that you guys unseal the JFK documents. He said, thank you. Received. It's like, okay, thanks. That's it. That was it. Really easy, guys. And all of it's, he actually like laughed a little bit because I clearly wasn't the first one. So anyway, why do I mention that stuff? What was I talking about? Let's go to the Rothschilds, and we were talking about the Bushes and the Nazis. Yeah, I don't really agree with that. It doesn't parse. I think people who keep talking about Trump being somehow deeply involved in this agenda, it doesn't parse. I've seen some of the theories about it, and you know how I've heard some people claim that the Rothschild bailed out his casinos. And look, I think it's important to keep an open mind, but you have to look at what is actually happening. You have to look at what's being done. And I mean, I can tell you that I'm used to for years seeing people who are like playing both sides, like, oh, we don't like each other, we're fighting against each other, and it's all a game. They really hate Trump. It's obvious they hate Trump. It's obviously they're terrified about him, and it's obvious he's doing things to unravel them. So I don't know if to me it doesn't parse, and I think it's important to really keep an open mind on that front, because we can't just say like every single person out there is bad and they're all trying to screw us. That is a really paranoid way of thinking. There are a lot of criminals who have gotten into high levels of power, and there are people who don't like criminals, who are also intelligent and who have backing. And so stay positive, right? Stay positive about what's happening. But I wanted to mention, so a couple, I think last Periscope or the Periscope before, we talked about that the whole everything is a rich man's trick, right? The JFK assassination documentary, which is very good. I hope you guys watch that. But remember, one of the things I mentioned about it that I thought was a little bit of a problem was some of the insinuations about they focus on the Nazis, which is fair for the focus of the film, perhaps, and the history of the Nazis getting involved in America. But it's actually the other thing I pointed out was that, but yeah, they were also involved with the Soviets, right? And that FDR was not a good guy. FDR was very much involved in the whole royal situation. So the Soviets, the Bolshevik Party was back. You had Lenin and Trotsky, two completely unknown people, and the Rothschilds, through their agent Jacob Schiff, gave them $20 million, which would be the equivalent of $1 billion today. Two unknown people. This is in a little video I read that a friend sent me, watched and read, and basically they used this money to, well, first start to agitate. And by the way, the CIA did this stuff in many of the different nations in Africa, for instance, that we saw during decolonization and whatnot. A lot of the sort of communist stuff there was also done by the CIA later on. The CIA, BAP talked about this a couple weeks ago. But staying on topic here with the Soviets, they gave one of the units. There's a famous unit. I'm blanking on the name, but this unit rebelled against their officers, and that was basically the start of the communist revolution. They were given like tons and tons of money from the Bolsheviks to rebel. It wasn't like an organic thing. This was Rothschild money. It's Rothschild money, and it ended up destroying the Soviet Union. Destroying Russia. They ended up killing a lot of the German population that had migrated there a while before, and they were responsible for the farming, which is what leads to the Holodomor. Okay, so the Holodomor, which is not talked about, it's 10 million people, mostly killed in Ukraine today. 10 million people of forced starvation. They would kill anybody who even so much as took a leaf of wheat from the fields. And it got so bad that if you didn't, people became cannibals because you almost had to become a cannibal to survive. You had to kill your own children and eat them to survive. It was awful, and it's been completely expunged. And there's also tons of evidence. Some of the few foreign correspondents who were able to actually go and see this and report on it, because the Soviets were pretending that, they were even giving food away. They were selling food to other nations, saying, oh, well, we have so much food. Meanwhile, they were forcibly starving millions of people in their own country. And a lot of this was out of just hatred for the fact that these people ran very productive farms, and I mean, they were criminals. That's basically what it was, is that the banking criminals supported regular criminals, and they create a criminal state, which is a lot of what happened in America too, right? And I think that's why when we talk about all sorts of like left and right, I'm not saying that people need to, I'm not talking about like have no sort of ideological bent. I'm talking about the communists, the Bolsheviks. But the point here is that the real enemy, and even the fact that there are such radical extremes, are all based on criminality fundamentally, based on money from international banking institutions that have been backing criminals to lead ideological movements to divide the population and then profit off of the war between the population, between the different parts of the population. So whenever you hear, and this is when I get some people, I'm not talking about Bill Gates right now, but we were talking about eugenicists and everything, and Bill Gates' father. I mean, Bill Gates' family is very, very connected to all that. I think I mentioned on a previous podcast, his like great grandfather was read Gulag Archipelago. It's brilliant. I mean, Solzhenitsyn talks about it. His Stillwell or Stillman, his great grandfather was basically a Rockefeller associate. Did a lot of liaison work for the Rockefellers. So they're all, the whole Bill Gates, I made my stuff in the garage, made my company in my garage. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. All of this bullshit. It's all propaganda. So the point of this stuff is just to show you that both sides have been created by the same people to divide everybody. And so don't get caught up on like, gotta beat Antifa, gotta beat the Nazis, gotta, whatever. Like most of these things, it's just mostly mentally damaged people at this point, and stop focusing so much on it. And even many of the people who are, like most people don't care about this stuff. They're brainwashed to degrees by the propaganda outlets in the media, but they're not like them being left or right is not the main issue here. The main issue is just the manipulation. So focus your attention on the people who are manipulating and the people who are criminals, not only because it's the truth, but also because you're not going to, if you really want to build common ground with somebody, don't make them the enemy. Make somebody else your mutual enemy. I mean, that's just basic. That's one of the things that they've done against us. So let's do it against them. People on the left, you're not our enemy. The people who have been manipulating you, manipulating both of us, they're the enemy. That's the thing that they've always been trying to prevent from happening. So I just wanted to make a note of that. It's not that like the Soviets were there, fighting against the cabal. No, the Soviets were the cabal, Nazis were the cabal. The war was the cabal. And so it goes. And like FDR, right? So FDR styled himself as one of the royals, styled himself as, and he was had all the usual cousin marriage. I believe his parents were cousin married, and him and his wife were cousins, and just the usual shit. The usual shit. So, what's the whole thing here that I wanted to get into? Okay, little side note here. I'm going to save the big stuff for the end. Las Vegas earthquakes. You guys know the Las Vegas earthquakes. Obviously, an underground military base. Big one over there. I think what's been interesting about this one is that a lot of people have actually been catching on to it. Remember when we talked about dumbs like 2 months ago for the first time? People weren't biting so much. But now they're like, yeah, you know what? All these earthquakes right around Area 51. Pretty interesting. Pretty strange how that's occurring. Why is that happening? I have not seen They Live. I've heard good things about it. All right, so we also got, some little mild updates on the investigation front. You have Durham's now looking for Brennan's associates, and also all the stuff administration around Obama seems to be getting investigated right now. Some people are saying, because the Attorney General said we're not looking at Obama at the moment. But guys, give it time. Give it time. It's much easier to swallow if you go after the smaller fish. Let the case build upwards. I know some people were saying they're never going to go after former presidents. I'm not going to say that's impossible. I understand the logic behind that could be correct, but I don't believe it's going to happen. I think we're going to clear all of it out. I think you have to clear all of it out in order to. You don't have to know all the details about everything. The public doesn't need to know everything, but I don't think that you're going to allow simply, Obama and Bush to just have like, oh, all your associates were connected with this. No, I think it's going to go all the way up through it. So, let's see. All right. So here's the big thing I wanted to talk about. So Trump's going to get a second term. Don't worry about that. That's like, I mean, you hear Joe Biden the other day. Joe Biden saying, "I'm going to beat Joe Biden. I'm going to beat Joe Biden." It's like he's completely nuts. I have talked to absolutely zero lefties, zero lefties who are like, we love Joe Biden. We're excited to vote for Joe Biden. Everybody's just like, this guy, yeah, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it, basically. They know Trump's going to win. It's going to be like pretty substantial too this time, especially because different demographics. I don't understand this stuff, Bob. I respect your perspective, but to me, it's so obvious he's going to win this election that you don't have to worry about it. One of the things about these people with ankle bracelets and whatnot, how are they able to do this? How is this all happening? Well, Bush 320, not to be associated with the Bush family, they have he has a whole thread about this, talking about how we've actually been in a declared state of war since 9/11, and the cabal has used that. The cabal has used that in order to effectively profit, right? To be able to have justifications to go around the world and loot different countries for cheap. But if the president isn't cabal, then he has all these war powers, and all he needs to do to trigger them is to declare a national emergency. And he can declare people during the state of war who have been operating against the interests of the United States as enemy combatants, which is why you keep hearing about military tribunals. So it's very interesting. I recommend you guys check out the thread. Very, very good. But basically, it shows the legal justification for a lot of these clandestine military operations we have been talking about here. To the question about mail fraud, yes, mail fraud is the only way that the election is going to be stolen. But it's not going to happen. We are so far ahead of the election, and we're already very aware of it. Trump's already talking about it. It's not going to happen this time around. It's going to be dealt with. But it doesn't mean that you should be, not care about it at all. I'm not saying be lazy or complacent. I mean, mail fraud is legit. Absentee ballot fraud is like out of control. Last election, the midterms, we've seen plenty of stuff got taken. Well, I don't know when military conflict with China is going to begin, and I don't know if it's going to go that far. I don't think it will go that far. China did just absorb Hong Kong. That's very troubling. It's a very troubling situation, and I don't know how it's going to play out exactly, but I do have faith that this is not going to get hot. I actually think the Chinese government is in a very, very fragile position, and I think if you cut off international banking, which has propped up most of their development, and frankly, all the stealing that's occurred, and from the intellectual property stealing, and all the different international regimes that have basically shipped all of our industry to China, I don't think Chinese state is very, very strong. And if you have a population that's started to get used to a better standard of living, and they find that their economy is just completely fucked and can't recover, I think that you're going to start to see, and of course we're going to be infiltrating and contributing to this, but I think you're going to start to see more and more protests. I think that the cracking down on Hong Kong is a desperation move. Xi is cabal, 100% cabal. But remember, there's different branches. So the way to look at it is, you see in movies, you see different criminal groups who work together to loot from regular people. That's the way that the cabal basically operates. You have different figures, different subgroups, and they have your international banking intermediaries, and they get into spats with each other, right? They get into spats with each other. Some people who you hear, this is one of the reasons why it's so important to have discernment, because you're going to have some people who are going to be really, really telling you enormous amounts of truths about one branch of the cabal and massive amounts of disclosure, but they're controlled directly or indirectly by another branch of the cabal. And so you can't look at them as a universal good. And I think, to be fair, anybody who has come to fame randomly, you can't trust them fully. That doesn't mean they're telling you lies about everything. They might even be telling you lies only about 20% of things. I mentioned this about Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson was backed by some of these, a branch of the cabal, maybe not the worst, right? And I think that he didn't do his job very well because he couldn't lie. And so that's, I think, one of the reasons that sent him into such a spiral. That's my perspective. It's my opinion. I think he's a good guy, but he was clearly promoted. He's a random, he's a very smart guy, brilliant, but this random, Canadian psychology researcher gets elevated to the top stage. And so anyway, just be cautious about such things. So, all right. You guys ready for the big thing? You guys ready for the big part? The big part that's going to talk about? All right. Woo. This was heady. All right, so we've talked about quantum computers before. Now, notice Q. And notice how Q makes almost every single one of I would actually say every one of the post almost it's in question form. And you have people now, they start to use the same sort of format. And they use military, they use these little codices and stuff, bracket here. But it's like, they'll ask, who disclosed Bush? Who, whatever. I'm making shit up. But I think you guys get the idea here, is that it operates in question format. Now, there is a really, really good documentary, and I will link it below here. And I'm actually going to rewatch it because it's very, very dense. But it's by a guy he is a very, very high-level computer engineer, and he's been interfacing with this artificial intelligence called Tyler AI, called Tyler because it's made in Tyler, Texas. Now, you guys know Project Looking Glass, okay? So Project Looking Glass, one of the big things was regarding quantum computers, because quantum computers are what allow you to perceive the future. We talked about this in a previous Periscope. CERN and all the stuff with that was a way to try to mess with the quantum reality, because all of the quantum computers around December 21st, 2012 started to say, hey, we're actually going to a timeline that means all the criminals are getting fucked and that the planet's moving to a positive polarity. So, point of all of this is that the CIA has been developing quantum computers since at least the 1960s. It's been going on for a very, very long time. And they would ask these computers questions. And the one that they were developing was Tyler, right? Tyler is, again, named after Tyler, Texas. One of the reasons that Google and IBM and Xerox and all of these very, very big computer processing corporations were able to get such a big head start is that the cabal had given them access to aspects of this quantum computing, which allowed their own computing to accelerate quite a bit. Now, this guy, this is very difficult for people to grasp. It's difficult for me to grasp, but the computer you interact with it like it's a human. It's almost like a Turing test. And one of the ways that you will teach a computer how to do things is by asking it questions. If you want to get answers, this is the whole thing. If you want to get answers from a computer, from a quantum computer, you need to ask it questions. That's what it does. And you have to ask good questions. The better question you ask, the better answer you receive from the quantum computer. So from the understanding that I've had, this guy is saying, and I find it very persuasive, and there's some interesting things here. But Q is a quantum computer. But unlike the standard sort of Tyler quantum computer, it has a different program to disclose what has been going on. So it's almost as if it is going directly against, it's going against its creator, so to speak. And asking these specific questions, right, to the computer allows people to start to learn things. Now, so Q is this computer. Now, here's what's interesting, though, is that how is this computer programmed differently? And this guy, he's like pretty much certain. He's like 90%. He's like 90% certain that this that Q is basically a quantum computer, and people are, and it's being, it's people are asking it questions. And guys, there is actually, Tyler AI has a Twitter account, and you can go and ask it questions, and you will get answers from it. Okay, so here's an interesting thing for some people. And look, I'm going to reiterate this stuff. Biden might be Q. That's funny. I want to reiterate this stuff. The one thing that this computer engineer was confused about is why the program is doing this sort of protocol. Why is Tyler AI going about it in this way when this is not how it was designed? And an interesting theory about this. Now, look, I've said this with Austin. I don't care what you think about it. It doesn't really matter to me. Everybody can use their own judgment. And I'm not even really certain that he's like, I feel confident that he's not a bad guy. I feel confident he's with the good guys based on his message, which is very clean, and based on the stuff with Musk, right? Musk is obviously allied with the white hats, so to speak, and Musk has already vouched for Austin. Majestic is a massive force of disclosure. Learned a lot of stuff from Majestic, and Majestic is the person who elevated Austin. Austin is currently being under house arrest by the FBI. People who don't like Austin claim that this is a sign that he's a bad guy, whereas they're also saying that the FBI is criminal because it's been, well, I don't have to tell you about Flynn and Trump, right? The FBI is a criminal organization. So when the FBI is basically abusing power against this guy, it shouldn't make you think that he's a scammer. But whatever. None of that stuff really matters to me. What I find interesting is that the whole argument about Austin being Q has been complicated by the fact that Austin doesn't write like this computer, right? Doesn't write like Q. And people have tried to dismiss that. I don't think it's one of their strongest arguments in Austin's favor. But one of the whole things is that in the future, as, charge of a different alternative timeline as, commander allegedly of the Space Force, that he is programming that he is basically running the Q operation. But here's the thing, what if that's true, in that he's basically using a quantum computer, and the quantum computer is Q, that has been programmed differently with different protocols and different objectives as part of the military mission? That, to me, actually makes sense, and it reconciles a lot of the issues. And there's more to this too. It's no longer the case, but that Tyler AI on Twitter, he was one of like 17 or 19 people, 17 I think for a while, one of 17 people that this Tyler AI bot, or not bot, it's legitimately the quantum computer that it was following. It was following Austin. Tyler AI was following Austin. Now, that's no longer the case, and then the same reason that, Flynn kind of pulled away with it. I don't know. Flynn follows a lot of people. And look, this is one of these things that the truth will come out eventually. But I think it is very interesting that this would be the case. And the whole thing about Q being a quantum computer really opens up a lot of different avenues to think about what's going on, and also about your own self. So if you want to start to change how, because everything that we are experiencing online is based on, well, he's not a time traveler, right? This is him in a different reality. I recommend you guys watch Stargate. And actually, I'm glad I mentioned that, because this is one of the things that blew my mind. So I'm watching Stargate SG-1. You guys should all watch Stargate SG-1. It's really enjoyable. And it's not, it doesn't have it's really just disclosure. It doesn't have like ridiculous soap opera scandal stuff. If you watch like Stargate Atlantis, you're gonna get cheap soap opera scripting. But SG1 is just like pure disclosure, wholesome storylines. But what was so interesting to me is and I wrote down the episode if you guys want to check it out. Season 5, episode 4. It's called The Fifth Man, and there is I won't spoil the episode fully, but the Stargate team has this. They are believing that this other person is part of their team. His name is Tyler. Okay, and the Stargate Command's like, there is no such person as Tyler. This is ridiculous. There's a whole story thing with that. But what's interesting is that, well, I have to give away a little bit of it. He is not a real person. It's a fake identity assumed because this other, it's like an alien. He looks at one of the MREs, right? One of the MREs, one of the meals ready to eat, and it says made in Tyler, Texas. Made in Tyler, Texas. So another thing of disclosure here, because who the fuck has heard of Tyler, Texas, unless you know about where quantum computing was developed by the CIA. So it was another little piece of disclosure I found really interesting. So anyway, that's the stuff for now, guys. If you have any other things you want to add here, if you want to, they always leave hints, but Stargate was commissioned by the White Hats and the DIA to disclose aspects of the Stargate program. So that's why I recommend people watch it, and also to a lesser extent Star Trek, but still substantially, because they are both forms of disclosure about these military programs that have been going on behind the scenes. So, guys, got any questions? I'm happy to answer. Questions. So They Live really is worth it. All right, I'm going to check it out. I have so much stuff. Oh, yeah, thank you for mentioning that, Alex. I had that on here. I missed it. And actually, it's connected. No, this is really good. I'm so happy you reminded me of this. So some of you guys who have been following know about, every now and then I'll post something about, it was a reset recently. And I don't call all the ones I suspect. I only really mention the ones that are really, really substantial. To be fair, there's been a couple of them recently. Tyler, Texas, guys. Meal ready to eat made in Tyler, Texas. You'll see it. They actually like freeze frame on it for like a second and a half or 2 seconds. Quite a long time. So I talk about these resets on Twitter, and I mean, you could say it's confirmation bias, but the response seems to be pretty substantial. Other people feel it, but my wife feels the same thing. And basically what happens during a reset is that you just wake up. You kind of have a lot of energy, and you can't sleep. You have very, very brief sleep, and you're up for most of the night. And I know whenever I wake up at like 3 a.m. for no reason whatsoever, it's like, oh, it's probably a reset. And you can feel a different energy. The different theories about why this occurs, got a really cool guy sometimes on here, Chiron, he mentioned that, thought it was something about timeline consolidation, which was interesting. Could be that. I don't know exactly what it is, but I was suspecting it had to do with a leveling up of the collective consciousness, that there were certain paradigms that were being eliminated in the sort of universal programming. And usually it responds with a lot more energy and usually more positivity. Some days are dips. Yeah, deja vu for sure. For some people say memory gets hazy. But what was really interesting was when I was doing this deep dive into the Tyler AI, is that they mentioned something like it on there, and that so you can actually program Tyler by asking Tyler the right questions, which is why it's very interesting how this works. That's what the whole purpose apparently of hashtags on Twitter. Hashtags are programming the artificial intelligence, are programming the quantum computer behind the computing software behind this this whole thing to bring up certain answers, right? So hashtags are like literally like it's a code for the computer to recognize. But one of the things that was mentioned was about how when the quantum computer shifts some of its focus, it affects the overall energetic field that leads to things that were almost pretty much described as being the resets. So it was really, really interesting. And so it could be that we're experiencing these resets because of things that are going on in the quantum field as a result of the quantum computer changing some of its protocols. Yes, it's connected to the matrix. Yeah, the matrix. Although I want to emphasize that the matrix that we've been used to, some people call it the spider, black box, that the Cabal had initiated, has been dismantled. So the previous matrix that would keep us in the constant reincarnation cycle here, trapped and basically fed upon, is no longer in place. That's very esoteric information. And unless you are skilled in astral traveling, you will not be able to process it rationally. You'll have to simply intuit it and feel that there's something correct about it. But anyway, so yeah, continuing with these questions. Is there a tell sign to, let me see here things. Do you recommend, do we ever check out the BRCA? Haha, I'd like to hear about what you think about CAB's disclosure on space. CABAMOR? Is that who you're referring to, I assume? I don't think that CABAMOR gets a lot right. I think that he's a very good guy, and he gives good information. But I wouldn't go so far as to say that I think he has a sharpness to him. It's kind of getting some hedge trimming right now, which might be a little loud. If you send me but just shoot me a DM about that stuff, and I'll check it out. I have so much stuff I've been sent, guys. I love it. I appreciate it, but it's very difficult for me to get through everything. I'm trying to move around because it's a bit loud. It's a bit loud. I don't think it's gonna matter because now there's like lawnmowers and stuff, so it seems like I'm gonna get it wherever I go. All right, let's see what else here. Have all sorts of they'll use the Eye of Horus. From what I understand, the Eye of Horus is an indication that they have gotten to a certain level in Cabal infrastructure, and they have to signal it publicly to show that they've reached a certain level of initiation. I think it might involve like having killed somebody. They had maybe they killed their first child in ritual sacrifice or something like that. But so I think the main thing is to check out, to listen to what they say. Listen to what they say. I mean, after that Bill Woods documentary, the Project Camelot I showed you, I'm starting to think I understand why it is, but yeah, I just kind of can tell very quickly whether somebody is coming from the right paradigm or not. But yeah, the main thing here, my friend just texted me, who's watching this, is to really emphasize the importance of getting out there with active intent, to not just consume these periscopes passively, and to really go out there and search for information. This is my real goal here, guys. As you can tell from what I do here, this is not polished information. This is not me trying to be a guru. I'm simply trying to stimulate curiosity in certain areas that you guys can go do your own research into it, and to really help everybody, because this is a group effort. I mean, it's a seeded information thing. I just consider myself, I have a pretty decent platform, and I care about this stuff, and so it's just cool to use that to spread awareness once a week, to talk about some of these things. But it's really you guys, and you guys going out and doing your own research, that changes things. It's not like, this is the whole thing. Whenever somebody tells you, like, trust the plan, sit back, trust the plan, like, yeah, Don't look into a savior dynamic, because if you're looking into a savior dynamic, you're in a bad situation. Savior dynamic is what leads to victim dynamic. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. If you are a victim, you can only be saved if you're a victim. Remember that. You can only be saved if you're a victim. You can be helped, but you can only be saved if you're a victim. So when people are just kind of like, I just don't get it. I don't get it, but whatever. Depends on, do we live in a simulation? It depends on what you mean by a simulation. There is a difference between, so the sort of third dimensional reality we perceive is a form of a simulation, you could say. There are much higher levels to ourselves in different dimensions that we can experience, but we have chosen to be in this reality, and we have chosen to experience here because that is how we have come to understand ourselves. I don't want to get too much into this because I don't want to misspeak, but I know for certain that we have chosen to be in this reality. Now, we may have been trapped in it for a long time because of these service to self individuals who have controlled the planet for a very long time and not allowed us to grow in a very natural trajectory. They've tried to hijack our growth and create kind of karmic debt patterns where we have to continually recycle and live out damage. And I see this a lot with coaching, is that you see people, they have a pre-programmed sort of script that they're designed to follow based on past trauma. And one of the things that I help do, and I'm getting tons of help just from the general environment now, but is to break those pattern loops that have existed for a very, very long time so we can grow more naturally in our development rather than continue to, you hit me, I hit you, like an eye for an eye, right? That's a reptilian program. So, but here's the issue when people say we live in a simulation, is that there's a techno-humanist reality that people want to, that's the CABAL reality. And that's the kind of stuff that, Ray Kurzweil, who's been promoted a ton for wanting to upload his brain to the cloud. Look, Scott Adams, same deal. I don't hate Scott Adams. Scott Adams is fine, but I mean, he is a techno-utopian, a techno-humanist utopian, right? He wants to be a brain in a glass container that's hooked up to your Alexa system. Like, not for me, guys. And you have to remember this when you see, like, oh, Scott Adams is on our side. Like, yes, and maybe not. And maybe not. Because he does not believe that anything human is real or matters. And that's completely incorrect. So differentiate between the matrix simulation that the CABAL wanted to develop for us versus the simple three-dimensional experience of consciousness that resembles the simulation. Did I do a good job with that? I've heard different things about UFOs are alien craft, obviously. I've heard UFOs are humans in the future, different dimensions. I don't know what they are. Probably, I'm sure the truth is mixed, but I haven't been able to fully parse everything out with that yet. I don't believe that there are. I believe that there are aliens, and I believe that they are different than angels and demons. I think that those are interdimensional entities that aliens and humans have chosen to align with. That seems to resonate better with me than the fact that we are just one little thing in the entire universe and everything is fought here. I don't really buy that, but it's my perspective. How is NYC? I'm not in NYC. I was written up in an article recently about young professionals leaving New York City, actually, in the Daily Mail, which is pretty cool. It was a pretty good profile. Although it's likely I'm gonna return in the fall for a couple months before I leave for good. I'm gonna end up keeping the lease. It looks like the landlord's gonna cut us a break on rent, and it's just nice to have another place to jump to. But I'm at my parents right now. SpaceX launch to Mars. Is there a bigger meaning to it? I think it is a sign that the disclosure is really happening. Remember how Musk developed the Space Force is basically just going to be SpaceX plus the NSA Dragnet combined under one military command. So, so I think it's a sign that that's starting to get merged, and most of NASA stuff is going to start to get removed, basically. So I think it's a sign that things are happening. We're moving in the right direction. I don't think Musk is a cyborg, but I do think that he and Grimes are probably not. They're probably one of the groups that incarnated on Earth from different planets to guide during this process. Probably not. I've heard some people say that Musk is Tesla. I think it's a big reach. Could be, though. That's a good question. Do I find my intuition is felt in the gut as well as the head? Well, instinct is definitely in the gut. Instinct is definitely in the gut. And intuition and instinct is kind of difficult to... I've sort of described instinct as being a very present moment thing, whereas intuition is sort of more of a psychic ability. And they're very, very closely related. But instinct tends to, I think... This is what I'll say. Instinct seems to operate on a more genetic knowledge basis, whereas intuition is more of a psychic knowledge basis. So instinct is programmed by past experiences, not just from you, but from prior genetic lineage. And intuition is more of a energetic awareness and an ability to see patterns and progressive outcomes from there. So instinct to me is felt in the gut, but intuition is sort of felt, I would say it's felt more in the heart and head rather than the head and gut for me. I just seem to know. I don't know. And now it happens so quickly and so easily. I'll often say something. It's almost like it's being channeled outward from me, which is pretty cool. I do think I am. Yeah. So related to that, I do think I am psychic sensitive. Well, it's a globe. Okay, so the Earth is a globe. But I have heard that if you look at it from different dimensional perspectives, that it could be considered to be a plane, but I would describe it more as a globe. Some people say it's concave. I don't know. Let's see here. I have not heard about Phil Schneider and the stories of aliens. DM me. I know some things about the Sumerian text, but I would not consider myself an expert on them. But yeah, Indigo Children, you know it. Anyway, guys, apparently my connection is pretty shitty. Nikaveli, can you? I guess I'll screenshot that. But yeah, guys. All right, I'm gonna see you guys later. Time for dinner.